What's going on, guys? This is Sumner Healey from landinvestor.co, and today I am joined by Rylan Loader, who is one of the first folks that ever went through our coaching program. He started back in October, is that right?
Yeah, back in October.
So back in October, so he's coming up on 1 year. So what we're going to do in this video is kind of break down just what he's learned in the trenches over the last year, what's worked, kind of the style that he's adapted. He's kind of built out his own style of doing things, some of the problems he's run into over the last year. And really the hope of this video is that if you're just getting started, let's say you're Rylan last October, you can take some of his learning, some of the good and probably some of the bad, and hopefully avoid the bad and then implement the good. So let's kind of talk about just what got you into land investing, what you were doing prior to it, and if there was any carryover from the stuff you're doing before.
Yeah, so right now I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. So growing up, my dad and I were always involved in all these projects. We'd work on vehicles, dirt bikes, cars, and we'd like flip cars and dirt bikes here and there. So just kind of going through that, I always had that idea or strategy of finding a deal and knowing the value of it and knowing what I could sell it for and knowing that I had the power to sell it at that price.
Yeah.
So going into college, I was studying engineering, just doing internships here and there. And, I realized that there's not a lot of space to grow as an engineer. I mean, you're normally in a big business, a big corporation, and you kind of have to go through the corporate structure to really go anywhere. And then I realized that you're only just increasing your income, but keeping that same 9 to 5, 40-hour week job. So in college, I was just kind of like trying to make money on the side, and I started flipping surfboards out in San Luis Obispo. So I'd go out, whether it be San Luis Obispo or Monterey, where I'm from, and then go find a deal on Craigslist, clean it up a little bit, and then put it up on an Instagram page that I made in San Luis Obispo. So I just started turning those over, and like one board turned into 5 boards, and then 5 boards turned into 20 boards, and it just got ridiculously.
Where were you storing these boards at, by the way?
I was storing them in my living room. So at one point we had boards stacked, like a 400 square foot living room, just boards stacked to the ceiling. And I realized like you're only making 150, 200 bucks on each board. Like I need to figure something out that's different.
Yeah.
So coincidentally, Sumner was posting on his social media that he was doing all this land investing, and I thought that was just way too good to be true. That you can't invest in land in another state and not even look at it and put that amount of money in and get those returns. Like it just made everything look ridiculous that I was doing. So I thought about it for a little bit, talked to Sumner a few times, and then I eventually bought his program. And then from there, just been doing land since.
Rest is history, as they say. Well, that's funny too, because there was 2 incidences. I mean, there's on a weekly basis, people reach out and you kind of get a read on like, yeah, I think they're going to be serious, or maybe they're not going to be super serious about it. And, best case scenario, everyone that joins is super serious, but there are some folks that go through the program and it's like, you can tell they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But there's 2 things that stuck out for me. So one, before you reached out, so before Rylan even joined the program, he started cold calling leads for us. And so I don't even know how we got into that arrangement, but most people would never find themselves in that situation. And I would go through and see the people that he was reaching out to, and he really was making those calls, which is like a telltale sign. I'm like, okay, this guy takes it seriously. And then the other thing too is like when you told me the surfboard flipping story, I'm like, oh, this guy's got hustle. And when I look at my past, it's like the business that I was running prior to the land investing stuff was I had a textbook flipping company. So there's parallels between flipping land for sure. It's just at a much smaller scale. Like our average profit per book might be $65, $75. And I think it's interesting too, because a lot of folks, when they hear about the land investing model or the business as a whole, they're just like, no way, that can't be true, right? Like that seems impossible. And it certainly is possible. So let's kind of talk about what you've done over the last year, just in terms of like, let's go high level. How many deals have you done roughly in the last year?
So I've only done about 6 deals now, and then I have several deals in the pipeline right now since I'm done with school and doing this full time. But I did these 6 deals throughout college, and these were big deals. I mean, these were 6 deals that really made a difference in my life and helped me understand that this is a valid business and that I can scale this like crazy.
Yeah. So those 6 deals that you did, and this is kind of interesting because I look at my story, I look at the story of a lot of folks that get involved in this business, whether they've gone through the program or not. Usually like the natural trajectory is like, you start super small. You're doing deals that you're buying for 500, selling for $2,000. And that's really where I cut my teeth. I just did hundreds of those deals until A, I had enough of a bankroll to go after bigger deals. And B, there's like, I wanted to prove the model before I went heavy and started doing bigger deals. It sounds like for you though, you kind of just circumvented that. I think the first deal you did was like a 40 acre out in Yavapai County. Is it the first deal?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the numbers in that very first deal. Let's kind of give them perspective.
Yeah. So I sent about 3,000 letters for that one.
Yeah.
Targeted like half of the properties were like 10 grand or above offer prices, and then the other half were small ones in case like any of those fell through.
Yeah.
So I got a few responses back, and then I ended up purchasing a 40 acre out in Yavapai, Arizona. And the acquisition price on that was $13,500.
Yeah.
So like I was a little concerned
It's a lot
at
of money.
first. Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Dude. Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm not gonna eat if this falls through.
Yeah. It's a lot of surfboards you'd have to sell to
yeah,
make that money.
yeah.
back.
It was like, this is everything
Yeah,
for me.
yeah,
And Sumner's like, it'll work out.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I put the money down on that, and then
how much did you spend on photos? I think you did get a photographer on that too, right?
yeah, photos were like 350.
Okay, and then you
probably.
took it through title.
Took it through titles another 800.
So you're in, call it almost 14.5, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
14.5, and then I remember this one you put up on the MLS. I think that's the channel that you use to sell it, right?
No, I sold it through Facebook.
Oh, you sold it through Facebook. Okay,
yeah.
Sold through Facebook, but
Yeah.
you did put it on the MLS, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I did put it in
Put on the MLS, sold on Facebook. Okay, let's talk about turn time on that deal. How long did it take to enter contract, and what you sell it for?
Yeah, so as soon as I purchased it, I put it on the MLS, and then I started hitting Facebook heavy.
Yeah, and you just in Facebook groups or Facebook Marketplace?
Facebook groups
Got
and Facebook Marketplace. So
Yeah.
post it on Facebook Marketplace, and then post that link everywhere.
Yeah.
All over all
Yeah.
the groups in the area, real estate investor groups. Get everyone to see it.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of responses that aren't so happy. There's a struggle with it with
Yeah.
people that are angry on the internet, but
Mhm.
you make it clear through the people that really want to purchase a
Yeah.
property or see value in it. So I think it was a week and a half to 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
quick. It was 2 weeks before I had it under contract
Yeah.
to sell. And I listed at 39,000, and then I was going back and forth with this investor lady, and we
Yeah.
brought it down to 30
Third, okay.
cash and sold it at 30.
So pretty much a 1x, pretty
Yeah.
close. Like after closing costs on the sell side, you guys split closing costs?
yeah.
So it's a pretty much a double your money situation net. So now you took, call it 14.5 grand, bank rolled that into probably 29.5 or so. What's your next play from there?
Next play was I sent more mail, and then
Same area? Where are you mailing?
I mailed the same area, and then I mailed Costilla, Colorado. I think at that point I still didn't understand how to pick your market in the areas that were really hot. So
Yeah.
I was just going after what everyone else was doing, and that was a poor mistake
Well,
on
and
my
there's
side.
totally, and it's so interesting. Like I'm not the only one that talks about land investing, obviously, and people have different strategies, and there's kind of different adages in terms of how you should do things. But one of the weirdest pieces of advice that gets repeated in this business is you should go after markets that other land investors are working in. And I find that to be so silly, and ultimately that's where the worst mailers, the worst deals have always come from. Like, sure, if you're going after base hits, right, you're gonna buy it for 3, sell it for 6, that works, and you can go after the same markets and you'll still aggregate deals. But what I found is like the outlier deals, the grand slams, there could be other people working there. It's not that there has to be no other investors, but ultimately you have to have demand as a prerequisite, right?
Yeah.
So you did Yavapai, you did Costilla. What was your next deal from there?
So I did 2 deals out in Costilla, and those were just small deals.
Like 5 acres or
Yeah,
something?
like
Yeah.
5 acres, and then another one was like 8 with electricity.
Okay.
I mean, that one was worth a little more, but still.
What'd you sell the 8 acre for?
8 acre I sold for 14 grand.
What'd you buy it for?
Bought that one for 3 grand.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Not bad, especially when you're first starting out. Like you get a couple of those kind of under your umbrella of deals done, and that it really does add up, because ultimately like the cash injection into your business isn't huge, but to turn 3 into 14 is ginormous.
Yeah.
It's a massive percentage return.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you did Yavapai, you did Costilla. When did you start to kind of pick up steam and kind of figure out, hey, this is my lane, this is my own approach?
Yeah, so I was like in the last month of college.
Yeah.
And I went over to this GIS guy that was working in my library, And I was like,
good
hey,
resource to have.
yeah, I was like running this automation to figure out where these comps were and like to map it out.
Yeah.
And like this automation was crazy. I thought it was the coolest thing. Like it would be a robot like mapping these maps out for me.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to visualize everything. I was trying to visualize a county and what the demand was. Then I come to him, he's like, what are you doing? And he shows me how to map on GIS and like make my own GIS map like you see all over the county websites. So from there I was able to like actually within 10 minutes put sales comps like into a map and just make it more of a data game rather
Were you
than
using Google My Maps for this? What were you using?
Yeah, so I'd put it in GIS
and
like calculate the center coordinates and then make a spreadsheet with center
very
coordinates and
throw it into of you.
throw it into Google Maps. So like this was perfect for me.
Yeah.
So like I took that engineering perspective and put it into something that was valuable.
Yeah.
So like I started building these maps and started to see why these areas were selling for more or why these were selling for worse. And then I was able to build out my offers that way.
Yeah.
And from there, I've just like made little critiques here and there. And now it's just like I have a full system where I'm able to choose a county that has good demand day of, and then have a full map with offer prices.
That's beautiful.
That night.
And so when you go and generate that map, are you saying, hey, I'm gonna mail the whole county and then price the pockets? Or are you saying I'm just gonna go mail the hot pockets? How are you determining where to go?
So I take all sales comps from like the last 3 years and then throw it into my map, and then it's mapped out right there. I can see it. And at the same time, I'll also pull from PropStream or DataTree and map out where all the owners are, normally out-of-state owners, and see where those properties are. And then from there, you can see like subdivisions and areas that are consolidated with owners.
Yep.
And then like you'll see the stuff that's scattered that you can't really find a comp for.
Yeah.
So your best comps are going to be in those consolidated areas. So then normally I'll just only hit those consolidated areas. Sometimes I'll hit the scattered areas.
Okay.
But that way I'm just saving money on wasted offers, because if you send an offer on a scattered area and there's no comps, you can't really tell what it's worth. And sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's way too low.
So so a couple of things. So you're kind of taking like the sniper approach to your mailers, which is exactly what we do in our business. We used to be shotgun, and you can certainly get deals that way. What I've found though is just not the most capital efficient for your marketing. I'd much rather spend more time on the front end in terms of building out like a thesis of the pricing and then mail from there and get really accurate with it. And then the next thing too is it sounds like you're mainly working in areas that are actually pre-subdivided where there's like a plethora of like-kind comps. You're not going out and buying the 160 acre lot where there's nothing close to it in terms of relative comps. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. You're mainly working in subdivisions. So you do Yavapai, Costilla, Yavapai, and I think you've kind of graduated and moved east. Is that right? So you're kind of on the eastern portion of the country now.
Yeah, I mean right now I've probably mailed 16 states maybe.
Yeah.
So like I'm all over the place, and it's just like anywhere that makes sense is good. And then from there you find your areas like, hey, I want to stick around here and spend more marketing dollars out here if this works.
And that, dude, I think that raises such a good point. This is another one of those things that for whatever reason gets preached in this business, and maybe some of it is not through the preaching, maybe it's just people's own ideas they come up with, but it seems like most people will hit a place once and then it's like taboo to go there again. Where what we do in our business, and it sounds like you do the same thing too, is like once we find a honey hole, once we find a market that's working, you need to double down. In fact, you should quadruple down. Like you should put everything into it and then continuously remarket it over and over and over again. You want to space out your marketing, but it sounds like that's what you're doing. Like once you identify an area, you don't just go find a new area, you're working it again. And what I found through that too is then you can start vertically integrating the resources that you have. So you find a great title company, boom, that's another resource that you get to add to kind of like your Rolodex. So it makes it much easier once you start working there. Same thing with like photographers, you can build up a buyer's list. So I think like I always look at it in terms of like that vertical integration. So once we can find a market or a county that's working well, find the resources and then continue working there. Is that essentially what you're doing now?
Yeah, so the last like 3 months have been testing different markets.
Yeah.
And now it's like I have all these maps created, I have all these comps created, and I haven't lost track of that.
Yeah.
So if I find an area that really works for me, I can just go in there. If I priced it too high or too low, I can just make a quick adjustment and sell on those offer prices and and go back to them, and I have all their data already, so you don't have to spend any more money
That's
on data.
another great point. Yeah, you've already got the data. And I think too is like we're always working with this like disparate, spread out, discombobulated data, and usually the best data that we have is the feedback that we get from our mailers. And so sometimes, again, if like we do a test mailer, because the way we look at it in our business is like, okay, we're going into a new market, we're going to test that thesis, test that idea before we really double down and sink a ton of resources into it. And even if we miss on it, but we're getting feedback from sellers, we'll go back and do another campaign. And we usually do that through adjusting our price, whether it's moving the offers up, moving them down. And what we find too, which is really interesting, is like sometimes by hitting it again, it's either people are seeing your letter again, and so like they just I don't know, think you're more legit. It's like the omnipresence kind of phenomenon. Or B, maybe they missed that first letter. So we even get new people reaching out to us, which I always find interesting. So when you guys are doing your marketing, and let's say you've identified a market on your Google My Maps engineering system, you're like, hey, this looks good. Are you testing first with a smaller batch of mailers, or will you go all in?
Well, normally what I'm seeing is like if you were to batch mail this county, like say you started with 3,000 out-of-state owners.
Yeah.
My process brings that down to like 1,000.
Right.
Like when you really start nitpicking stuff and figuring out how to like look at every property, but like not actually do that, you'll sort through a lot of stuff. So it's like it's hard for me to find a county
where
with
you have
enough.
so much data. I'm the same way. I mean, like if we look at our average mailer size, it's like 750, 600 records at a time. We just do a lot of those. But yeah, no, you're right. So kind of by nature, it already is a test mailer, just based on the fact that you're whittling it down. And so with all that being said though, so it might be like 70-30. That's usually about what you're gonna see on like the top end. It's usually gonna be somewhere between 50-50 and 70-30, which is expensive capital. Like if you're doing a deal where the net on it's 30 grand, you're paying them out 15 grand for just bringing money to the table, which becomes excessively expensive. Like you might look back on a year and say, wow, I paid out 200 grand, 300 grand to partners, which is a good problem to have because that means you're making money as well. And then at that point, there's an inflection point. You can say, I'm gonna take the capital that I generated and self-fund my deals, which I actually think is kind of a silly idea, to be honest, because at that point you should be not looking to maintain at the same level, you should be looking to scale beyond where you're at. But in order to scale beyond where you're at, the capital that you have isn't gonna be enough. And so at that point, you can go and find other partners that wanna go fund your deals. Kind of like Rylan was saying, that could be friends, it could be family, it could be strangers really. What you're gonna find is if you go out in the world and you go look for folks that wanna fund deals, you can get much more favorable splits in the equity side of things. And then from there, if you really want to push it to the next level, go get a promissory note. Go take on debt, whether that's from a bank, whether that's from just a private party who's lending. And you could be paying 8 points, 10 points, 12 points, 15 points, whatever it may be, but it's going to be infinitely less than what you'd be paying equity. So there's kind of like a natural life cycle that people go through in terms of growing into getting cheaper and cheaper capital. But really from day one, you've got funding available. And if you go through the program, Parcel Funders has partnered with us in terms of having access to go fund those deals. Like anyone, they're going to underwrite the deals. They're going to make sure it's a solid deal, which is really in their best interest. So it sounds like that's what you're moving into next. Are you looking at other capital sources in the meantime, or are you just focusing on the deal funders?
Yeah, so I know that they have a lot of deals coming in, and not every deal meets the requirements, but maybe like I'll think that is a good deal. Like, hey, I'm still gonna 2x, 3x my money on this. Why would I not pass on this deal? So that's when you bring in friends. That's when you say, hey, like I have this deal here. All I need is for you to send like a wire to the title company, and this will make you money. Like this works out, you know? It just makes sense. Like, why would you pass on that deal?
Right.
And like Sumner was saying, like money is infinite. Like you can find it anywhere.
What I find is there's every situation, there's way more money than there ever is opportunity. And so really, like if you look at what we do is we just go and source opportunities in the world of land, and then you're just kind of pairing that up with people that are looking for opportunities, right? Especially as like the landscape in the stock market and the broader real estate market becomes more tumultuous and just a little more up and down and a little more unknown. I think there's going to be an influx of capital that's looking to be placed in solid opportunities. And the incentives are aligned. Like in a lot of cases, it'll be on a time-based spectrum. So if you sell a deal in 30 days, it's going to be at this split. If the deal takes a year to sell, maybe they get all of the profit, right? And so like they're kind of backed by your performance, which I think is really a win-win in a lot of cases. Now, One of the things that I think a lot of people get kind of hung up on when they're first starting is just like there's really two paths you can go in this business. There's their owner finance route. I'm gonna go build a portfolio of notes, and that's gonna bring in what we call MRR, monthly recurring income. Some people call that passive income. I say those people are lying through their teeth. It's not passive income. It still requires a lot of diligent work. Or you can go the route of, I'm just gonna go snowball cash and do it through cash sales. And then maybe for something more passive, you'll go take that money, place it in outside investments outside of your business. What route have you gone, and do you think you're gonna stay on that path?
Cash only right
Cash
now.
only.
The economy is so great right now that
Yeah.
cash just is way more common than it has ever been
Yeah.
in the land business.
Yeah.
But like maybe the economy slows down and cash becomes less common.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's when I'll start doing owner financing, or when
You
it's
haven't
just
done
like,
one owner finance deal?
No, I've had several owner financing deals like lined up,
Yeah.
and then that same week I get
So
a cash
okay.
offer. I'm like, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you're starting too, like if you're starting with a limited amount of capital, the velocity of your money is infinitely more important than, even though you're going to get a much larger return on the owner finance stuff, to be able to keep on turning your cash over and over is huge. And then when I look back at like my journey, I spent years doing a lot of owner financing, which was great. But it definitely slowed down some of my growth because I would have to wait 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to get my full basis back from that deal to go reinvest it in other deals, right? It looks like the camera cut off there, but essentially what I was saying is we're gonna be running an experiment, and I think it's gonna be a pretty worthwhile pursuit, both personally and also just to document. But essentially the math that I've done is we can take about 150 grand, snowball that into somewhere around $1.4 million in owner finance kind of total value. That should translate to about $40,000 a month in recurring revenue. And that's a really cool kind of alternative strategy once you've already got the cash machine working. But what I did was the inverse. I started with owner financing, then went cash. Now I'm kind of doubling down on owner financing again as a separate strategy while we keep the cash machine rolling. I think what you're doing makes a lot more sense. So when you're beginning, start with the cash model, build up a nice war chest of capital. Then you can start kind of parlaying that into some owner finance stuff, because the owner finance is like, it's like a wealth creation game. It's a long-term game. It's a slow game. The cash stuff in 12 months or maybe a little bit longer, you could go and make a couple $100,000 pretty quickly. And so it sounds like that's the route you're going. Do you ever plan on adding owner financing into your wheelhouse?
Yeah, if it makes sense.
Okay.
And then if you get enough cash to make it
Yeah.
make sense. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much room you can grow and so many deals you can do in a year in a land business.
Right.
So it's like
I'm trying to prove that otherwise.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of people that I know that were in the land business, like maybe they graduated to something else. Maybe they did bigger real estate, commercial, or whatever. But like for like in my situation, it's like I just want to build as much cash as possible.
Yeah.
And then from there, I have so many network connections. I'll figure out what I want to do with that money.
To go place it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings a good point. Let's talk about A, why the heck are you even doing this? And then B, what are the goals for the next 12 months within your business?
Yeah, so the reason I'm doing it is I read a book. It was Millionaire Fastlane. I don't know if you've read it.
Yeah, MJ DeMarco,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah.
But he brought up product businesses, like owning a product business.
Yeah.
So when you own a product business, the only thing that is holding back your time is the time that it takes to put into like flipping or turning over a product. So you have full ownership over your time with a product business.
Yeah.
Whereas you work a W-2 job, you may get a higher salary, but you're still going to work the same amount, maybe even more, probably more.
Yeah.
So like, why would you put all your effort into making more money, but keeping that time constraint?
Yeah.
Then owning a product business, maybe you don't make a lot of money at first, but you develop a structure. You figure out how to sell it faster, how to sell it for more, and then from there, it's just how can I scale this? How can I build a team around this, and then buy back all my time?
So it's a time play for you, right?
Yeah.
Which, not the first person to say this. I even feel guilty saying it because it's so cheesy. But it's like that's really the only thing you can't renew, right?
Yeah.
You can always go get more money. You can always go make more money. I think being 22 and having that perspective is pretty damn wise. I was definitely at the kind of the inverse of that at 22, where it's like, I want more money, I'll sacrifice all my time for it, right? But I think the time play is way more meaningful. And as I've grown just as a person, I'm like, that's really what I want, right? Like because your business can quickly turn into a hell on earth, much like a W-2 job, where you might be pulling a ton of revenue, you might be pulling a ton of personal income, but you're working like a dog. And so there's something to be said about maybe working a little bit less, maybe sacrificing some of your progress, but having your time back. So what are you going to do with all that free time? What do you do with the free time that you have now? What does that look like for you?
I just take off the time when I don't feel like working. It's nice. I feel like I'm a more productive person.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes you'll get caught on that day where you don't want to work at all.
Yeah.
But it's like I'll work when I want to work, and I'll get quality work done. And then like midday, I'll go for a run, go on a bike ride or something, clear my head, and then I'll come back and I'll work till like 11 p.m. There's nothing holding me back from doing that. It's an online business.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm really enjoying it, even though I'm working like crazy.
You probably that's the ironic part. Is like you don't want to work 40 hours a week, so you start your own business to work 80 hours a week, right? But I think there's something to be said about like the kind of like work culture here in the U.S. and really any Western country is like this 8 to 4, 9 to 5 mentality is so silly. Like to think that you can be productive in a linear fashion, I don't think it's human, right? And so like one of the biggest perks that I found is kind of spot on to what you said is that freedom to dictate when you work. And when you're working within the own rhythms of when it feels appropriate and when you feel called to do it, you're way more effective. Yeah. And that's what we should be measuring here. It's not how many hours are you working, it's what's the output, what's the return, how effective are you? I think that's way more important. So it sounds like riding bikes, running, you're kind of breaking up your day, have a little more freedom in your day, and you can take this business anywhere, right? Like you're moving here soon? Yeah,
I'm moving out to North Carolina, so that's a big change. It doesn't change anything about work.
Yeah,
which lowers my taxes.
Is there no state income tax in North Carolina, or is it low?
I think it's super low.
Super low, yeah. I think South Carolina is the one with no state income tax, which is awesome. Okay, so let's talk about, we'll wrap this up here. It's been a really good chat and appreciate the time, but let's talk about next 12 months, what's on the horizon. I always like to get tactical. I hate when people are like, I'm looking to grow. So like, let's get tactical. Give me some like kind of basic numbers of what you need to achieve.
Yeah, so it all starts with mail. Yep. I'd be working with 10 to 15,000 letters a month. Yep. I may become more over the next 6 months. Yep. And then after that, it's like I can't handle that myself. I found that out this month. I can't handle that. So my first step is hire one employee, train them, just ins and outs of the business, and then from there try to bring on capital partners. Yep. So we'll be working with parcel funders still, but maybe we'll bring on some friends, some strangers that I meet here and there to fund those deals, because I will have a lot in the pipeline maintaining that those mailing numbers. Yep. And then at that point, you just need to bring on more people on the team so you can expand. So probably, hopefully, 3 employees by the end of next year, maybe more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are you looking at just in terms, do you have like I know it's such a tough thing to peg down, but like a revenue goal or like a deals done goal?
Revenue goal? Like I just want to net like 300,000 by the end of next year.
Yep.
Revenue,
whatever.
Can't tell.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But net to the business, 300K, and hard to say how many deals it's actually going to shake out to be. Based on the kinds of deals you're doing, I reckon it's probably less than 50 is what I would anticipate.
Yeah.
Because you're going after quality deals. And let's just kind of give a little perspective. Like, what's average deal size on the buy side, average deal size on the sell side?
So far it's been around like 8 to 11,000 buy. Okay. And then those are generally 2x to 3x returns on those. Okay. But now I've just been targeting like 70% of my mail towards like $30,000 to $50,000 acquisitions, and then $100,000 to $120,000 acquisitions, just because it makes sense.
For it. But it does, yeah. All things being equal, it's like the same amount of work to do a $10,000 deal as a $100,000 deal. Well, great, man. I'm stoked that we got to carve out some time to do this. It's been on the books for a long time, so glad that we actually got to sit down in person to do it. And fired up on just the progress that you've made. And when people talk about their goals, what they're looking to do, you always wonder, I'm like, are they going to follow through with it? You're one of the few folks where I'm like, I actually really believe he's going to go do that. So it's going to be exciting. We'll do a revisit maybe 12 months from now, see where you're at. Appreciate you guys for sticking around. If you guys are looking for more land investing content, we've got tons of videos in the pipeline. If you guys want to subscribe, you can give it a thumbs up. If you want to give it a thumbs down, that's fine too. No harm, no foul. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for sticking around.
Later.